right, welcome back to the channel, and we're glad that you came by to see us. So we wanted to answer some questions today. We're going to start off with some leveling type questions, like how do you level your yard, how do you get lumpy spots out, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to ask Jerry some questions. This is Jerry McMillan. He's been in the landscaping business for about 40 years, and I worked with him for about 10 years as well. So I'm going to ask questions that you may have, and we'll see what he has to say from experience and what he thinks about the ways that people do it now versus the way he's always done it and what's worked.
Well, I think I've ran into a lot of different problems, so hopefully I got the answers.
Yeah, we'll see. So some people try to use sand to level out a lawn. So what do you usually use, and what do you think about sand? And tell us about how to level a lawn if you got dips.
Well, what I've always ran into, and I've ran into a lot of them, we would just use some topsoil to fill it in, but sand on a lawn where it's got a lot of bald spots that are hard soil, sand will help you loosen it up and have something to work with. But if you have a big hole or you're trying to get your whole lawn good and level, I would just use topsoil myself. But sand would work in a lot of smaller areas or hard soil, what I'm thinking about.
Okay. So some people say that you should use like finer sand or coarser sand. I know you haven't used sand a whole lot. You have a different way of doing it, but would that really matter all that much?
I believe if you had a yard that had some really hard areas and they needed something to loosen it up, I'd use a coarse sand to go in there with it and till it in. Till it in so it would make the soil at least 3 or 4 inches deep, much looser, and that would be easier to sow grass seed.
You're talking about like the clay, that
yeah,
hard clay.
In this area here we got what we call just red clay. It's just a reddish soil, and it gets real hard when it dries out, sun baked. So you'd have to use something like coarse sand worked in to loosen it up where you could grow grass seed.
Okay. So what type of material would you use? Like, let's say there was some dips in a lawn, there's some uneven spots, and that kind of stuff. What have you always used?
Well, if it's a job you want to have a good looking yard when you're done, you could use a bobcat, till off some of the scoop off some of the high points and shove them into the low points. Or you buy some topsoil, fill it in with topsoil. Depends on how big the lawn is, how rough it is, and when you got either topsoil in there and maybe scooped off some of the high points, you'd have a lawn worked up to a good level area, and that would be a good plus.
So then you would take and seed it, fertilize it, and stuff over the areas.
Yeah, over the whole lawn, if you had to work it like that, you would just fertilize and aerate it and then seed it and water it.
And if you had like a little hole, let's say it's pretty deep, could you just get sod and
if it wasn't real big, that'd be the best thing to do. If it's real big, you could get a dump truck full of soil. But anyway, it depends on the lawn, depends on the holes that you're dealing with. But that's what you would do. You could fill them in with topsoil, or you could kind of grade off the high places. So you make it level the way you want it.
So what's the very first thing you would do? Let's say there was a lawn and had some low spots. What's the first thing you would do? Like, I would think maybe mow it, because you got high grass, you can't even tell.
Oh yeah, you'd probably have to get it down to where you saw what you were dealing with, maybe get an idea how deep they are. Like I said, you would scoop off if you've got a lot to work with, you'd have to scoop off some of the high places, and that would help. Then you'd grow your grass seed, and you'd end up with a reasonably even lawn all over.
So is there any like limits on the amount of material you should use? Like, depends of course on what kind of dips you're going to have, but like you mentioned, a dump truck versus a wheelbarrow full. What kind of, like, let's say the normal homeowner, they have some dips. What would they be looking at?
Well, if you was wanting to get by cheap and do as cheap as you could, I would say topsoil would be the best way to do it, to bring it up to level with the rest of the lawn, possibly maybe till up some of the high points so that you'd end up with something that's level. I've done that several times, but it depends on what you're dealing with. It could be a small lawn, you wouldn't have to have but a little bit of topsoil. If it's a great big lawn, you'd have to look at it a different way. It'd be a lot of topsoil, There'll be a lot of grading.
Yeah. So would you have to, like, let's say the dip is here, and would you have to take out the sod first and then put the stuff in?
No, you wouldn't. In fact, it wouldn't hurt if it grew through it, but it wouldn't. But anyway, you just put in your topsoil, good. At the last 6 inches would be the real good stuff. Have some loam in it, and then you fertilize seed it, so it looks like the rest of the lawn.
So what kind of tools would you use to work that kind of stuff in? Because you're going to have to work it in some to make sure it's good and packed down. There's different types of stuff, different types of rakes or stuff to stamp it down. What kind of stuff would you usually use?
Well, if it was a big area, I'd use a bobcat or a good-sized mower to run across it and pack it down. If it's small, you can use a garden tiller, or you can use a couple of guys with the rakes kind of lift it out. Depends on the size.
It'd probably have to be something like one of those hard rakes, because the leaf rakes.
Right, it'd be what we call a garden rake. It's got a real stiff tines on the end of it, and it can handle some good soil without damage.
So what about those tampers? They have those. Have you ever used those where you just all day long just smashing it down?
Oh yeah, if you wanted to do that, they actually have some that can work on the roads, work on gravel, work on the asphalt. But they have different kinds that's similar to that you'd work on soil with. You may have to rent one if you don't own stuff like that. I don't have one, so we'd use something heavy like a lawnmower or a bobcat to run over it.
So you can just run over it.
Yeah.
So are there any other tips you can think about if someone's wanting to level their lawns? Stuff that you might think this is something that really has helped us in the past?
Well, I like a lot of homeowners. Through the years, like I said, been in business about 40 years. I've met all types of people. Very few that don't work with you. So if you tell them that needs a good working in all over, and even the new place you're fixing, you can't tell a whole lot of difference in it. The whole lawn will look alike. Then you do what you're kind of a dress up, like putting on the makeup. Put on your fertilizer and seed, and then you aerate it into hard areas you haven't been working. Next thing you got you an area to start watering. In 10 days to 2 weeks, you have you some green grass growing all over. Look good.
Be nice and level. Well, we appreciate you coming by and letting us talk to you, ramble a little bit about how to level out a lawn. If you've got dips in your lawn, if you've got spaces that are uneven, maybe some of these tips can help you. If you like the video, please click the like. It helps us out. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button. But hope you come back, and we appreciate you watching our video today.
Well, I enjoy talking about the things I've done through the years, and I hope I had something to say that would help you out too.